Good evening. Welcome to Womb with a View's Maternal Monologues, and thank you for leaving the comfort of your own living wombs to be here. We have a special delivery tonight, true stories, written and bravely contributed by local women here in the Robson Valley. Though the narratives are anonymous, these personal accounts remain raw and fully dilated. Here are some of life's crowning moments. Granted, not every preeminent climax is bliss. I hope your imaginations are soft and supple because your perspectives are in for a stretch. Please turn off your cell phones, put your personal convictions on airplane mode, and get ready to bear down on these intimate inside stories.
I was 20 years old, working in the far north of nowhere, living a trajectory of self-indulgent whims. Change began with the flu. I couldn't kick. I was nauseous and fatigued. I called my sister and she said, you sound pregnant. Pregnant? I spent the next 3 weeks in camp telling myself I couldn't be pregnant. And all the while, telling the possibility that was growing in my womb, don't worry, it's not your fault, I'll take care of you. Circumstances weren't ideal. I was young and single, with an irresponsible limp in my independent strut, so I forged an alliance. I needed security, and, well, he needed a reason to pull his life together. It seemed like a promising relationship. But pregnancy was fogged in with denial and disbelief. Suddenly, I was sharing my body with a tiny stranger. I felt weak and malnourished. Food seemed to bypass my stomach and go directly to the fetus. It grew and my organs had to relocate. Sometimes it was hard to breathe. Sometimes my heart hurt. But I assured the plundering parasite, "It's okay, I'll take care of you." As birth approached, I began to have nightmares. Aside from the one in which I gave birth to a puppy, they all shared a common theme. My maternal debut was always in a cold, sterile enclosure. And I was alone. I got used to the nightmares. My fear shed its skin, and from it emerged a determined sense of self-reliance. So I abandoned my hospital birth plan and sought out a midwife. Except Ruth wasn't a midwife. She was a 60-year-old take-no-shit expert on natural births. And she was booked solid. I once heard her say, "If I hear the word empowered again, I'm going to be sick." She didn't coat nature with sugar. But she could read a birth like a manuscript. I convinced her to squeeze me into her schedule, promising that my birth would be quick and uncomplicated. When Ruth asked about my birth plan, I answered, "Well, I'll begin the labor with a dance party. When things get a little more intense, I'll go for a walk, pick up some scratch and wins, then spend the rest of my labor hoping to get lucky." She recommended that I watch a birthing video and talk to my partner about the birth plan. I never watched the video. My boyfriend said it would be cool to receive the birth news from the bar and shout, "It's a boy!" then buy everybody drinks. I told him not to worry about getting time off. Labor began during a prenatal yoga class. At first, I attributed the sensations to the poses, but by evening, there was an undeniable rhythm that even my naivete couldn't ignore. I called Ruth, who advised me to get some rest. Resting through contractions. Imagine flailing through in a stormy sea, struggling for breath before another pounding wave tries to drown you, and all the while an invisible python is wrapped around you, crushing you, pulling you under. Anytime I moved, another wave would hit me with an intensity that made me vomit. and my feet ached with cold. I called Ruth in the middle of the night. She asked, "So, when's the baby gonna be born?" And what I thought was, "Isn't that your job to know?" But instead I heard myself answering, "Before 8 a.m. tomorrow morning." She listened over the receiver to the rhythm of my storm, timing the breaks between each crashing wave, then told me she was on her way. I lay still, trying to ride the waves and weather the storm. Birth. How can something so normal seem so impossible? Ruth helped me into a bath, then retired to the couch. In the warmth of the water, body bursting through seams that don't exist, I learned to float. I soothed in the calm of my aloneness. Morning broke, and in the dawn of a future I couldn't quite fathom, I watched the sunrise. The baby engaged. Ruth made it to the doorway and said, "Well, I better call your sister if she wants to catch a baby." I heard Ruth tell her doula class one time, "If the mother thinks she isn't progressing, that's good. It means things are softening and she won't tear. Or if she starts swearing at you or your husband, that's also good. It means she has a lot of energy. Or if she says she can't do it anymore, get ready to catch a baby." Confident in Ruth's intuition, I bore down to the tune of Johnny Cash singing Ring of Fire on repeat in my head. I fell into a burning ring of fire. I went down, 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 and the flames went up higher. Then a 30-second break between contractions, half a minute of deepest sleep. And it burns, 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 the ring of fire, the ring of fire. My sister was at my side, my waterside lifeguard. Oh, it felt like I was about to crack. At the tail and split from the hindquarters up. And that's when I learned that that's what bursting with life really feels like. And it was just before my 8 a.m. forecast when nature pressed the release valve. Deliverance. The pain that held me in a death grip was gone, and in its place was perfection, with a squished button nose and tiny hands.
It's too bad that babies don't come out as easily as they go in. Home births account for approximately 2% of births in Canada. Despite cultural apprehension, home birthing statistics reveal impressive outcomes. In low-risk populations, records for home birth accompanied by midwives show a major reduction in interventions. They also contribute to a decrease in labor time, a decrease in vaginal tearing, less infection, and an increase in breastfeeding success and client satisfaction. Midwives aren't available to practice in the Robson Valley, largely due to its rural location. Yet, equally remote communities have succeeded in bringing births home again. The allocation of public services reflects the culture, priorities, and needs. What does our birthing culture look like? What are our priorities? Is a birth an emergence or an emergency? Hospitals have their growing pains, but in the process, medical accomplishments like antibiotics, safe anesthesia, and blood transfusions have played a major role in the near elimination of maternal mortality. With the primary safety addressed, obstetric practices turned its focus to reducing the pain in childbirth. It seemed easy enough. Knock the birthing mother out and voila, no pain. My great-aunt claimed that births were great, except that after 4 children, she still didn't know where babies come from. Let's take a look at this approach to birth in the 70s.
It was June 1971. I was busy preparing for high school exams, my wedding less than a month away, and the honeymoon. With a jolt, I realized I'd missed my period. I told no one except for John, my husband-to-be. We were going to be parents sooner than anticipated. Luckily, I didn't have a clue as to what that would entail. The length of our honeymoon was determined by the haying season. I was recruited to raking on my in-laws' farm, driving the little cockshut 30 tractor all day in the scorching sun. Some evenings after a long, hot day, John and I would slip away for a swim in the lake. We lived in a little summer kitchen that was skidded onto land given to us by John's parents. But when fall set in, we moved into the in-laws' basement. Expectations were high. There was no sleeping in. I was awakened with everyone else to help with the chores. John and I would bring the cows into the milking parlor, and then morning sickness would force me out the back door, as they say, to feed the cats. I didn't know my growing fetus would be moving around inside. The first time I felt it, fluttering like a little butterfly, I fell in love. I became protective of my body, caring for it, seeing it in a way that I'd never felt before. That fall, we bought a small house in town. We finally had privacy. I settled in, cooked, cleaned, and was very content. I was ballooning into a round, plump young woman. One night, I got up to go to the bathroom and pee leaked down my leg, followed by pains in my lower abdomen. When I realized I was in labor, a chill came over me. My limbs were robotic. My teeth chattered. I was afraid. When we arrived at the hospital, I was told, "Put your knees up and relax so we can examine you." I wasn't far along. John was allowed in the room, but each time they checked on my progress, they'd ask him to leave. He didn't mind the break from wiping my forehead and having his hand tightly squeezed. It was around noon the next day when the nurse asked if I felt like pushing. I said, "I guess so." They rolled me into a cold room with instruments sitting on counters and hanging on walls. The bed had weird stirrups at the feet. To my surprise, they fastened my legs in those stirrups and then tied my hands to a pair of handles. I was terrified. I needed out. The baby needed out. It was so damn cold and I was in so much pain. And where was John? I finally spotted him sitting in a chair behind a big window, waiting for the show to begin. The doctor was called in and the nurse instructed me to start pushing. They placed a mirror in position above so I could watch the progress. All I saw was blood, so I asked them to remove it. As things progressed, the nurse put a gas mask over my face and told me to breathe deeply. I threw my head from side to side, fighting it. I did not want to be put under. I wanted to be awake when my baby was born. I could feel the forceps as the doctor inserted them to clasp baby's little head. She came into this world crying ever so loud. She certainly had strong lungs. A nurse untied my hands and they laid the baby on my chest. A warm blanket was placed over us. It felt like it had just been pulled out of the oven. It was a wonderful gesture. I began to cry and cuddled into my baby. I was so thankful we had both survived the ordeal. Once I was stitched and saddled with a big pad, they took me to my room, which I shared with 3 other moms. Baby was taken to the nursery. She weighed 8 pounds, 4 ounces. my mother-in-law commented on how fortunate I was that she wasn't full term. The baby was premature according to our wedding date. Nursing was difficult and painful. My mother hadn't nursed her babies, and I was clueless about the process. John was asked to leave the room while I was educated. When our baby girl showed signs of being hungry after nursing, I was given a bottle of glucose to supplement her. The nurses did the diaper changes, bathing, putting her under the billy lights, and only brought her to me when she needed to nurse. Sometimes I recognized my baby's cry from my room and knew she'd be brought to me soon. The day finally came when John arrived to pick me up, and to pick up me and baby and to take us home. I was so proud and pleased to be leaving the hospital with my healthy little bundle of joy.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is my honor to present the Physician's Wooden Spoon Award. There is gold, there is silver, bronze, and then there is last place. Last place gets the wooden spoon. The Wooden Spoon Award goes to the medical specialty with the least evidence-based practice. Outdated science, voodoo. This practice is particularly wary of progress. The existing systems are convenient. The patriarchal approach is... Oh, that's for a different speech. But why? Why the wooden spoon? Are some practices so embedded in our comfort zones and education that clinical effectiveness takes a back seat? Is it the physician or the culture that gets the wooden spoon? Perhaps both, being to some degree inseparable. Without further ado, I present the wooden spoon to the medical practice of... Well, can I get a drum roll? Obstetrics! Oh, what's that? Well, there are no obstetricians here. None in the Robson Valley. Well, what do women do here when they get the urge? They're certainly not sticking around here to have their babies. Pardon? At least 4 babies have been born in the Robson Valley this year alone? And there are no obstetricians? What a travesty! My sincere apologies. There is no need for this wooden spoon, but there is a need, or at least a career opportunity, in the area of... Can I get a drum roll? Obstetrics! Let's give our non-existing obstetricians a hand, folks.
Sunday, June 20, 1948. Dearest Charles, we beat the birds this morning. At 5 a.m. the nurse brought in the bath water. She likes to get through her work early. The wee one was just in for a feed and I was able to spend enough time to get a good look at her. She looks like you. The sisters don't think I have enough milk for the baby, but I'm sure I'll start producing more when I get home. It's been 6 days of bed rest. I hope to get up tomorrow.
Actually, I've been up for the odd spool of thread and knitting needle, but of course the sisters don't know. I'll ask about getting out early. God and Doctor willing, I'll be home by Friday. The hospital bill will be around $60. There's already $30 to our credit, and I've got $20 more with me. So I hope I can make up the difference when I go. Monday, June 21, 1948. The sister was just in to tell me that she thinks the baby should be put on a formula. I haven't had a fair chance. Every time she cries, they think she's hungry and make me feel like a dog about it. I'm not going to let them take her away while I'm trying to nurse. That's enough of my pains. Telling you my hospital troubles reminds me of a joke Helen told me the other day. There were twin heifers born on a farm in the States. The farmer sold one to a farmer in Idaho and the other went to Kansas. The one in Idaho wrote to her sister saying, "What a wonderful place this Idaho is. The grass is thick and green and Leo the bull is a magnificent brute." The sister wrote back saying, "You're lucky. Kansas is an awful place. The grass is scant and yellow and Alma is a steer, and all he can talk about is his operation. Bye for now, my sweet." P.S. The doctor was just in to see me while I was feeding the baby. He saw I was upset and asked me what was wrong. When I told him it was because the sisters don't think I have enough milk to feed the baby, he wanted to take her off altogether and right away. I couldn't stop crying, and he was awfully mad and told me not to be so silly. He insisted the baby be taken off the breast right away. I wouldn't agree, but the nurse came in and put a tight binder on my breast to stop the flow, and then brought in a needle to make me stop producing milk. I cried and I begged her not to give me the needle. She became cross and called the doctor back in. It was awful. I wish you were here to tell me what to do. The doctor came storming back and told me I would lose my baby or make her sick. He said, my milk didn't agree with her anyway. I said that she'd only vomited once, and that was this morning when I was so upset. I couldn't say yes to having my breast dried up. The doctor got so mad, I thought he would slap me. He said if I didn't do as I was told, he wouldn't take any responsibility for anything that might happen to the baby, and left. I hate to be so difficult, but I haven't given nursing a fair chance. I dread seeing the doctor again. Sorry to have you know all my problems. Sending a prayer, darling.
Babies' palates have ventured far and wide in the quest for the ideal sustenance. Before baby bottles and formula, wet nursing was a well-organized profession with contracts, a registry, and laws designed to regulate the practice. Employment for wet nurses declined to extinction in the 19th century with the well-designed bottle. Animal milk and cooked cereals have evolved into formulas, and the advancements in chemistry and food preservation contribute to the increased replacement of breastfeeding to this day. What's this?
An invitation to my gender reveal party.
You had a sex change?
No, I'm pregnant.
Oh my gosh! Oh, congratulations! Hello, little baby.
Don't touch my stomach.
Oh, sorry. So, gender reveal party. I don't really get it.
Haven't you heard? A gender reveal party is a great way to announce the pregnancy. It's like the new inclusive baby shower.
Oh, dinner, fireworks lit by fire-breathing dragons, free bar and dance party. Wow, this is amazing. I can't imagine what it'll cost you.
Oh, well, you see, the two things I always dreamed about were my wedding and becoming a mother. So I wanted to commemorate one event just as much as the other. So we're budgeting the same for the gender reveal party as we spent on the wedding.
Wow, that's gonna be so special, so memorable. Oh, make sure you hire a cameraman, because if you didn't take pictures, it didn't happen.
Oh, already covered. I hired a hashtag tech for the video. I hope it gets enough views to cover the cost of the dragons.
Yeah, so what's it gonna be? Blue or pink fireworks?
Yellow. We're going with a gender-neutral color.
Oh, well, didn't the ultrasound tell you what the baby was gonna be?
An ultrasound can't tell us what the baby is going to identify as. But I hope baby wants to be a girl. Those dresses are so damn cute.
I've either peed my pants or my water's broke. Water really breaks as I wait for the doctor to confirm the source of dribble. Pitocin to speed things up? Decline. I ride it out at home until what I can only hope is nearing the bitter end. I've labored sleepless through the night, but at the hospital discovered that I'm less than halfway dilated. Did I want to have something to help with the pain? I decline. Labor. In the tub, out of the tub. I pace around singing my ABCs, but what I really want to do is scream. Discovery. Baby is occipital posterior, and I have a cervical lip. We try to flip her, but no luck. Exhaustion hits. I fall asleep standing up between contractions, my partner catching me as I collapse. How can I push a little person out of my body when I am so very tired? I choose to have an epidural, hoping to get some rest. After a short time, it's time to sleep. And then it's time. I push with all my might. A resident doctor says, "We really need you to try." The surgeon asked if I prefer the forceps or a cesarean section. I choose forceps until the doctor mentions episiotomy. C-section it is. The spinal gives me the shakes. Husband and doula hold my hand and try to keep me calm. The surgeon and her team are talking about Christmas lights. I can't breathe. Then the baby is out and the surgeon says, "Hey, ya buddy." Buddy? The ultrasound informed us it was a girl. Is it a boy? A boy we prepared for by buying pink clothes and painting a pink room? My heart sinks. They bring the baby over to me. It's 9 pounds, 3 ounces of beautiful baby girl. Recovery was hard. Hurt to sit, to stand, to walk, to lift my baby. I felt helpless. I felt like my independence had been stripped from me. A quiet rage grew. Why was it up to me to be the sole provider of nourishment, love, compassion, and everything for this little human, while everyone else went on with their lives? Motherhood felt so isolating. I questioned if I was cut out to be a mom. First self-doubt, then anxiety. Is she sleeping? Is she dead? Is she getting enough to eat? Am I overfeeding her? What if I drop her? What if I choke on what I'm eating? The list of dark, pervading thoughts carried on. Crying myself to sleep became the norm. In my heart, I knew that it wasn't the way motherhood was supposed to be. But I was ashamed to admit that I had postpartum depression. It was hard to acknowledge PPD for myself, let alone be stigmatized by the public. Postpartum depression is not always tears and sadness. For some, it's rage. And that's what it was for me. Why won't anyone help me? Where is my support? I know that this was wrong. I had help, I had love and support, but in my blackness, it was hard to recognize. It's been almost 3 years since I gave birth. I've faced the depression. I've asked for help, but I'm still not out of the woods.
In Canada, cesarean section rates are at 28.2% and tend to be even higher in rural areas like the Robson Valley, where women have to travel to give birth and seldom have continuity of care. Nearly half the cesareans in first-time moms are due to labor dystocia, also known as failure to progress. Maybe you've heard the term before. The most popular format for the term failure to progress is based on the study from the 50s. It observed 500 Caucasian women from 13 to 42 years of age and graphed their progress and dilation time during labor. This graph, known as the Friedman's curve, continues to be responsible for a high number of cesareans, despite more recent studies suggesting that, on average, natural dilation takes considerably longer. Shortly after giving birth, my nephew came to visit. He was a C-section baby, and although he was only 4 at the time, he was well-versed in the world of emerging babies. He asked me, "Did your baby come out of your belly or your gina?" Navigating birth is fraught with the unexpected, but being informed provides a compass with which one can direct and change the outcomes.
For every birthing book you read, an hour longer labor.
Old wives' tales. Well, if you don't read the books, you can still ask your care provider for evidence-based information. Ask for an informed choice discussion for pros, cons, risks, recommendations, alternatives, non-invasive interventions. And then fathers, we're not going to forget about you guys. It takes 2 to tango. It's true. You can't make your partner's pain go away. You can't push that baby out for her. But don't underestimate the power of presence. Evidence confirms that having the emotional and physical support of an attentive partner during birth, as well as someone who can advocate for the birthing mother, can significantly impact the birth's outcome. The aftermath is yours and your partner's to share. Parenthood is not a challenge for the mother alone. Approximately 10% of fathers also experience postpartum depression.
Doctor, where's the doctor? Call the doctor.
Doctor?
Doctor!
Where's
the doctor?
The nurse was in a panic. She was the only nurse on shift. The doctor was at home sleeping. My water still hadn't broken, but none of that impeded my baby's progress. Nurses aren't in the business of water breaking, and this one had never delivered one in the call. Her lack of confidence was apparent. "Don't push," she ordered. If I knew then what I know now, I would have listened to my own instincts. But inexperience and uncertainty made me obedient. It was my second attempt at birthing the baby. 3 weeks before, I had been diagnosed with cholestasis in pregnancy. Pregnancy had convinced my liver to go on strike, and it was no longer processing bile. Little is known about the condition, but the recommendation is to induce ASAP. Inducing against the will of the body and the baby was excruciating. Synthetic hormones triggered a massive exodus of my body. I acquired hemorrhoids and a large varicose vein, but no baby. The doctor suggested breaking my water since there was no progress after 24 agonizing hours, but I wasn't sure. I put him on the phone with my doula. She asked the doctor if I was aware that if I hadn't birthed the baby within 48 hours of it breaking my water, a cesarean would be certain to follow. I wasn't aware, so I decided to hold off for the night and rest. My partner, he stayed up researching cholestasis in pregnancy. He found a study from Norway that said induction was imminent if bile acid levels reached 48, but my bile acid levels were just down at 5. So we decided to go home. I ripened, and when my bile acid level reached 38, the baby was ready. Despite holding my breath and trying not to push, the baby was still on its way. The nurse had just told my partner that I wouldn't be able to hold out any longer, and the doctor finally arrived. He walked in, broke my water, and said I could push. I pushed once on my hands and knees, ready. I pushed once in a crouching position and birthed his head, aim, and then one more push and fire! The baby shot out so fast the doctor barely caught him. Everyone was stunned and stood motionless. Then my partner began to laugh. And laugh. All the fear and worry releasing in elated, uncontrollable laughter. It brought us back into action. Our baby, who had just started to wail and was laid on my tummy, yes. The stress from the previous month faded away. We had our baby boy. We were parents.
Damn kids leave stuff everywhere.
Happy Mother's Day, Mom. I made you breakfast.
Oh my goodness! Aw, thank you, sweetheart.
Well, I helped a little bit with the eggs, but she did the toast all by herself.
Oh.
This is the best toast I've ever had.
Really?
Yes. I'm so lucky to be your mom. The day you were born was the luckiest day of our lives.
What was it like?
The day you were born? Oh. It was magical.
Why isn't it out yet? My vagina can't stretch any bigger. Mommy, were you scared?
Oh, no. I was excited. And a big smile on my face the whole time. Didn't I, sweetheart?
Oh, yeah.
I hate you! You did this to me! I hate you! Daddy, were you scared?
Oh, dads don't get scared.
No.
It's not supposed to be like this! I'm not ready to be a dad!
You're not a man!
I'm sorry.
Then what happened?
Well, then it was time to push. But my body knew exactly what to do.
Oh my God, I think I'm pooping! I can't do this!
I think it's time for the episiotomy.
No, don't let them cut my butthole in half!
And then one little push, and you were born. And you were the most beautiful baby in the whole world.
Why does she look like this?
She looks like
what happened on the best day of my life.
We now have a 20-minute intermission between contractions. Be sure to check out the bake sale in the lobby. They're probably giving the cake an episiotomy as we speak. I can also assure you that the best muffins you've ever had are out there. There are refreshments as well, coffee, and also a virgin labor cocktail. No alcohol or castor oil, though. The donations from drinks and goodies are going towards a cause that hits close to home, bringing birth, training, and education to rural areas in Nepal. The task is being carried out by our very own locally raised Kazuko Hiroe, my dear sister, who's in her 3rd year of midwifery. She's an incredible advocate for birthers and babies and is going to change the world one birth at a time. To the left of the door, there's a vision board, food for thought, which we're hoping you'll regurgitate back up for us. We'll see you back in 20 minutes when we transition into the second phase.
There are 2 classes of women most liable to hysteria. Those who have too many children and those with none. Now, this is just one of the many pearls of wisdom that I'm delighted to share with our fair sex from the newly published 1870 edition of Manual for Wives and Mothers, written by our esteemed Dr. Pai Shavaz. And it's offering excellent advice on the treatment of complaints incidental to pregnancy, labor, suckling, and wifely duties. Now, the ceasing of one's monthly pains or unwellness is the first reliable sign that a woman might be enceinte. That is why we refer to pregnancy as ceasing to be unwell. Now, if you want a puny Tom Thumb for a baby, give him the milk of a mother or a wet nurse who overindulges in wine or brandy. No pregnant woman should exceed more than 2 glasses of wine per day or 1 glass of sherry. And he strongly protests against a young wife dancing if she be enceinte. Singing, on the other hand, is very, very encouraged, and she can do it throughout her whole pregnancy. Now, sexual indulgence may be suspended with decided benefit to both the mother and the child. The injurious influences upon the child of the gratification of the passions during the period when its character is being formed is undoubtedly much greater than is usually supposed. We have no doubt that this is the common cause of the transmission of lustful tendencies in the child. Pregnant women often get the fidgets. It's caused by a heated state of the blood. Now, compounded spirits of lavender mixed with aromatic spirits of ammonia taken before bed will often be a cure. Avoid all greens, hot buttered toast, pastry, and rich meats. Months before the confinement, the pregnant woman must bathe the nipples every morning and every night for 5 minutes in eau de cologne, or brandy in water, smoothed over the breasts with a soft linen cloth. A monthly nurse is essential for the pregnant woman. She ought to be middle-aged. If she be young, well, she's apt to be thoughtless and giggling, and if she's too old, she'll be deaf and stupid. Labor, the dropping of the womb, shivering, frequent desire to relieve the bladder, nausea, and grinding pains are all good signs of serious labor. In early labor, she should be encouraged to walk around, not be confined to her bed. But when the grinding pains change to the bearing down pains, the nurse might do well to rub her body with warm oil. Now, labor is a natural process, and a woman stands a better chance of delivering a healthy child with as little interference as possible. If labor is going well, the doctor needn't even be in the room, but could be on call in an adjoining apartment. A good wife is heaven's last best gift to man, his angel and his minister of graces, his casket of jewels. A woman is a fruit tree, and the child is her fruit, if one but follows the sage advice of our esteemed Dr. Pai Shavas.
I've given birth 3 times. I'll just come back. Number 1. Number 2. Number 3. Every time was different. With my first child, I planned for a natural birth, no drugs. If my mom could do it, I could do it. I'd labored in the bath for hours, and when I emerged, I told my husband, we should go to the hospital. He asked if he could finish an episode of Dragon's Den first. He's a compassionate man. By the time I got checked into the hospital, I was begging for drugs. The baby was sunny side up, and I had horrendous back pain. They gave me fentanyl, and I was transported to the outskirts of Comaville. A few hours later, I was 9.5 centimeters dilated. The doctor congratulated me by announcing that he was going home to sleep. The pain was back. The nurses figured that the baby would come soon, but my cervix refused to open anymore. By 2 a.m., the fentanyl had worn off, and I was exhausted. Despite my initial terror, I conceded to have an epidural. I would have done anything at that point. They popped my water early in the morning, and after 13 hours of labor, 6 of which were spent at 9.5 centimeters, my daughter was born. She was a forceps birth, and the nurses said she had the biggest cone head they'd ever seen from being stuck in the birth canal for so long. I was drugged and woozy, but I was ecstatic to hold my baby in my arms. For my second birth, I hired a doula. I wanted someone to remind me that drugs weren't my only option. I was watching TV in the morning when I heard a loud pop. I thought it was my hip popping. It wasn't my hip, and soon it was apparent that I needed to get to the hospital, and fast. I called my husband and the doula, and then packed my daughter and drove the 40 minutes into town. Do contractions count as distracted driving? When my husband met me, things were moving at an urgent pace. We dropped our daughter off at a friend's place, still buckled into the removed car seat, and tore off to the hospital. My doula met us there with a wheelchair and helped me to get checked in. My husband, he parked the car and found my room, but not without wandering through the hospital and finding a party along the way first. Yeah, he offered me a bite of cake. Cake! A doctor came in to let me know he was going off shift. Well, he was called back, and before he could get to the door with one enormous push, my second daughter entered the world. It felt amazing to have birthed without drugs and to be clear-headed when I first held her. The whole process from the moment I heard the pop to my daughter's birth was three hours. In between my second and third pregnancies, I had 2 miscarriages. The first time it happened when I had an IUD in, and when it was removed, I lost the baby. I didn't realize how much I wanted another child. until I found out I was pregnant. I was devastated. My husband, he wasn't ready for more children, and I struggled with depression for a year before feeling like myself again. The second miscarriage was after a planned pregnancy. I'd always thought it wouldn't be a big deal to try for another baby after a miscarriage. But I didn't realize how profoundly it would affect me to lose something that's smaller than a walnut. My unborn babies were lives loved, lost, and mourned. My third child, induced. We had moved back to our hometown in Valemount, and I was worried about birthing along the highway if I waited to go into labor naturally. We opted for a geographical induction. That would be an induction due to living in a non-ideal location. At 39 weeks, with the baby still riding high, we drove to Hinton. Baby had no intention of coming out, and when contractions finally started, I was admitted with the expectation that I would give birth within a few hours. We were all mistaken. I spent the night bouncing on a birthing ball while my husband snored blissfully on a pull-out couch. The next morning, the doctor broke my waters. Baby stayed stubbornly high. They started the Pitocin and things kicked into high gear. I was overwhelmed with pain and asked for laughing gas. Great. There's only one machine, and during the night, another woman had come into labor and arrived and was using it. Nothing was going right. I started to cry. They offered me IV drugs, and I snapped, I don't want them. So, they offered me an epidural. An epidural? Didn't I make myself clear? I spent 3 more contractions thinking of reiterations of screw off, and then lost my train of thought and requested the IV. Yeah, they gave me the fentanyl. Didn't take the pain away, but it did make me see colors. When the urge to push became unbearable, I was instructed to wait for the doctor. She arrived 20 minutes later. My third daughter was born with boom, 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 3 big pushes. After each of these births, I wondered at the woman's ability to experience such intense pain and continue to want more children. I love being a mother, and I am so grateful for the experience that all 3 of these births have given me.
The chance of miscarriage increases with the mother's age, and by 40 years old, the miscarriage rate can be as high as 45%. Yet despite its prevalence, miscarriage is seldom talked about and is a needlessly lonely experience. This intimate, sometimes invisible loss can be difficult to recognize from the outside, further isolating those in grief. Reaching out and connecting in such a sensitive space can be intimidating. One woman said, "It wasn't until I experienced a miscarriage myself that I realized how offensive it felt to be told, 'You can always try again.' When offering comfort, we want to assure that sadness is temporary and that it will go away. But there's no comfort in having your loss devalued, your pain belittled. Pregnancy is a vulnerable period with challenges in every outcome. How do we support the variances to be there for the incredible joy, to hold space in the blackest grief?" Next are a series of 4 different stories, 4 different outcomes, 4 different challenges. They are vulnerable moments prone to invoking judgment and opinion. Spare them. And consider instead that perhaps the most practical contribution we can make is kindness.
there was no heartbeat. Actually, I don't know if there was a heartbeat for the first one. I was 16 and I opted for an abortion. I felt so guilty, like I had this tattoo on my forehead, the Scarlet Woman. She had to take to her bed. That's what they used to say back then. And even though we were just both kids, we stayed together. We moved, started our careers, got married, both of us so happy to plan a child. And I got pregnant easily. But at 12 weeks, I went for a checkup, and the doctors told me that the heart had stopped beating at 7 weeks. What? There's no heartbeat? I didn't know what that meant. This baby was a part of me. It was with me. They booked me for a removal. They offered me the scan picture. No heartbeat. But I wanted the picture for a record, you see, to have closure, kind of like a gravesite or a memorial. Time to rebuild my body and soul and then try again. We were so happy when my second pregnancy was confirmed. And then the crushing news of no heartbeat, the removal, and the slow, painful climb back up to, okay, let's try again. We both wanted children with all our hearts, and we were healthy and young and strong. There was no reason why this second pregnancy should yield the same result. But at 12 weeks, I'm sorry, but your baby has no heartbeat. The removal. We get tested. Good news is we're both normal and there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to have children together. Just bad luck. Go home and have fun trying again. 2 more pregnancies. One a very painful ectopic and one with no heartbeat. 2 more removals. I kept the scans for all of them. And with each pregnancy, I was more afraid, more nervous, more protective of myself. And I was plagued with a sadness and worry for my friends and my family who had to keep witnessing my sorrow and my misfortune. But each time I picked myself back up. Maybe I was even emotionally stronger after each one. I don't know. It's hard to say. And my husband, in particular, well, he could hardly bear watching my sadness, and he felt powerless to help. He assured me that we could find happiness as a childless couple rather than put us through another failed pregnancy. So we soldiered on. We moved to Canada and we started a new life, and guess what? I got pregnant. At first, they said that they could see an embryonic sac, but it was empty. Oh, here we go again. I went to another doctor who said, no, relax, there is a heartbeat. What? There's a heartbeat? And a normal pregnancy followed and the birth of my son. Now, both of us came from big families, so we wanted at least more. One more. Pregnant again, and this one had a heartbeat too. But no brain. Just a brain stem. And this baby was not viable and would not survive infancy, so I was given the choice of taking it to term or to terminate. Another removal. Another recovery. And a year later, we were blessed with a second healthy pregnancy and the birth of my second son. So I guess you could say that mission accomplished. But I wonder why, every day, why? Why did I have to experience such a loss after receiving the gift of my 2 sons? My aunt, who was a great comfort to me throughout, said that these unborn children are little souls, and they're an integral part of me. They came to bring you something, she said, even though they weren't destined to live in this world. And I believe that they did bring me something, certainly character building, and most importantly, a compassionate understanding of how vulnerable we all are. Those 6 little souls, my my unborn children, who visited me briefly and caused me to suffer such pain and such loss, gave me strength in my vulnerability and a belief that our soul's mission is to give love even when faced with heartbreak.
Don't talk, don't trust, don't feel. The unwritten rules of an alcoholic family. Raindrops bead down the window, landscapes roll by as the train heads east. My cheek is pressed against the cool glass. Tears fill my eyes and then spill over, steady as rain. I am alone on my way to the big city, to my sisters. There is an embryo implanted in the wall of my uterus. There is cell division, hormones, there is change. I am alone, and I'm not talking about this. I arrive. The kitchen table is cluttered with paraphernalia, papers, lighters, hookahs, full ashtrays. Pungent smoke is in the air. People are dressed in flowing cottons and velvets, uniformly unique. I'm a stranger in this new family, even with my sister. She is the older one and feels responsible. Mom and Dad don't know I'm pregnant, and she's afraid of this secret that we share. I am not talking. I'm young and alone. The men are curious about what brought me here. They smell my fertility. My fear attracts them. My youth and innocence challenges them. My beauty scares them. I don't trust anyone. Every month, bi-weekly, and then each week, I walk the 6 blocks to the public prenatal clinic. The waiting room is crowded with women waiting to be processed. Predictable data slotted into a chart describes me. There are no relationships. I am alone. When someone asks, "Will you keep the baby?" I answer, no. No one cares enough to hear my story. Body as container, a walking, breathing, living baby maker. My outside does not match my inside. There's no connection between the two. At all costs, don't feel the sadness, the grief, the shame. I am numb. I'm not talking, not trusting, and now not feeling either. I know labor is starting when I see tinges of blood for the first time in 9 months. Early contractions wake me. I go to the hospital and am processed. Paperwork, shaving, enema, gown, and then I slide into the assigned bed. My sister, nurses, doctors slip in and out, but essentially, I labor alone, quietly. Nitrous oxide, spinal anesthesia, helps with the pain, and I am feeling it now. I stay in an internal state of knowing. Even with my state of dissociation, I feel connected to all women. My mother, my grandmother, my sisters throughout time. This ancestral knowing comforts me in my alienation. I am quiet and contained throughout the 14-hour labor. I give birth to an 8-pound baby boy on October 25th, 1968. Postpartum is torture in the maternity ward, where mothers are with their babies and I am not. Recovery from an episiotomy is humiliating and painful. Fear of infection means a 10-day hospital stay. I feel empty, and still I don't talk. A young nurse comes to check me. Ma, you have a large pubic bone. You must need to wear a bikini with a ruffled skirt. I think I have never worn a bikini in my life, but I don't say a thing. The social worker visits and the adoption is arranged. She takes me to the nursery and I see my baby through the window. We are strangers to each other. I keep thinking, I have nothing to give you. I am nothing. I don't even know who I am. My tears flow while my milk dries up. 51 years later, I have courage to talk about this birth. I'm in the birth registry, but my birth son hasn't found me yet. I would like to tell him that his birth has shaped my life in so many ways. Now I have a voice. The silence and loneliness of that time has given me the strength I need to share this story with you now.
My pregnancy story isn't that interesting. There's really not much to say. I was 25, dating a guy that was probably too young for me. Fuck, I loved him. We had a lot of fun. We were always careful, but one night the condom slipped off. I didn't think I was ovulating. 6 weeks later, I was at a wedding, with him actually, trying to drink a champagne toast and getting sicker with every sip. In a moment, I knew. It's a funny thing to recognize a feeling I'd never felt before. I felt it in every pore of my body. I took a test to be sure, and I told him right away. He was ecstatic. He was so excited to be a dad. And I panicked. I knew I could have that baby, but I was worried that at 19, he had so much more living to do and deserved the freedom to do that. I was so torn. I told my mom. She asked who the father was. I said I didn't want to say. I think she knew. She told me that she supported my choice, whatever it was, but if I chose to get an abortion, she wouldn't be able to go with me because my father was strongly opposed to abortion. I had never heard him take a stand on the issue. Apparently, they had even discussed offering to raise a grandchild themselves if one of their children had an unwanted pregnancy. My mom wouldn't be able to keep my secret and still come without lying to my father. I wanted to tell my closest friends, but over the years I had heard them express anti-choice sentiments due to their respective conservative and Christian upbringings. So I didn't. I told a friend who had had an abortion, and she helped me sort through my options. With only those conversations and a lot of Googling, I decided that having an abortion was the right choice for me. I told my boyfriend. He wasn't happy, but he supported me. My doctor got me a referral to the closest medical center, 300 kilometers away. The hospital told me that I had to have someone pick me up and sign me out. I lied to my best friend, telling her I needed to get a non-optional surgery, and I asked if she would take me. She came, and she didn't ask any questions. I woke up from the anesthetic with tears running down my face, but I couldn't tell her why. It was a lonely drive home. That night, the bleeding wouldn't stop. I fainted a few times. My young, incredible partner came and took care of me. But we didn't stay together. It was a wake-up call for me. If I wasn't willing to have a child with the person I was being intimate with, then we probably shouldn't be in a relationship. So I broke up with him. We remained close friends. Every year on Father's and Mother's Day, we would wish each other a happy you're not a Father's Day or congrats on not being a Mother's Day. Our dark inside joke allowed us to acknowledge that time in our lives without dwelling on it. I never regretted the choice I made, but I'm not going to pretend it was easy. It brought up a lot of things. Asking my mother to keep a secret from my father. Making a choice that I knew would devastate him. Lying to my best friend who was so willing to support me. My unconscious reaction to giving up the baby. Tears falling from comatose eyes. The grief waking up from surgery and the mark of sadness that it left. And finally, heartache for my ex-partner. His young life was cut short in an accident, leaving me wondering if I had taken away his only opportunity for offspring. I didn't have all the answers. I still don't. But I try to practice an ongoing acceptance. I made the best choice for me at that point in my life. And that's all we can ask of anyone, isn't it?
For me, postpartum was like having to relearn how to live. The smallest, most tedious tasks were like mountains I had no will or energy to climb. Showering, eating, walking. And yet, on other days, I would lose myself in the act of taking a bath, just to get away and think. Think the never-ending thoughts of anxiety, depressions, close companion. Think about what would happen to my family if I never came back from my indulgent trip to the grocery store. Think about what would happen to me if some sort of tragedy befell my baby, yet somehow feeling like I could use the relief it would bring me. And then there was the rage burning inside me to this day about everything, every little thing. An errant hair on the sink, rage. Husband slept through the last 3 wake-ups. Rage. No one can see me or hear me. Rage. The happiest times were the angriest, punctuated by throwing fists into the walls, sippy cups into the sink so hard they'd break. Yelling so loud I'd terrify everyone around me, including myself. It's a lot. Sometimes still, when it feels like too much, I have to fight a powerful urge to lay down in the nearest spot and never get up. Outside or inside, doesn't seem to matter. Even snowbanks seem appealing on certain days. On other days, it's easier. I just keep reminding myself how to live, like really live. Grounding myself by noticing a glint of sunlight in my window, or the breeze moving a curtain, because somehow those moments when I wish I would die are also the moments when I'm still enough to see life happening around me.
Defining motherhood as motherhood defines me. Motherhood is just a euphemism for slavery. Motherhood, building strength while I lose my mind. Motherhood, drowning in my own incompetence. One in 7 women experience postpartum depression within the first year of having their child. And childbirth qualifies as an extreme traumatic stressor, meaning that it can trigger postpartum depression and even post-traumatic stress disorder. The reported prevalence of PTSD after childbirth ranges from 1.5 to 6%, but like postpartum depression, numbers are realistically higher than reported. What does this mean for doctors and care providers? It means that those facilitating childbirth have a responsibility not only to the physical outcomes, but also to the impacting experience of childbirth. And it's not that simple. Every woman is different. Every experience unique and subjective. For all those care providers, doctors, nurses, midwives, doulas, and locally, even the paramedics who are navigating the safe delivery of our children with compassionate care, thank you. It's a big job. If those were difficult to hear, know that they were just as difficult to share and far more difficult to experience. Birth is such a powerful force of life. So let's not forget about the beauty, the wonder, the empowering immensity of it. Here is one more glimpse of what birth can be.
The week before my daughter's birth, I noticed signs that I was close. And we had decided to have a home birth, so I was wary of going too far from home. And this was my second home birth, and I felt as prepared as I could ever be. Only positive birth affirmations were in my head. Absent from my thoughts were the negative comments surrounding home birthing and associated risks that people often talk about. But I wasn't looking forward to the pain. And as my belly grew, I just wanted to get it over with. Being heavily pregnant this time around was not very comfortable. July 11th. 2 days after my due date, I'd had enough, and I was going to get this show on the road. A friend and I walked. I waddled for 6 kilometers along a bumpy road, and I came home immensely sore in my hips and my pelvis. A large glass of wine to relieve my pain seemed the right thing to do at this point. 7 p.m. I sat on my big ball and I drank the first glass of wine of my pregnancy. Oh, it was amazing, the relaxation that came over me like a wave. And while drinking my wine and eating pizza, I could feel a couple of Braxton Hicks contractions. So I decided that a bath would help relieve my very sore hip and pelvis and joint pain. My toddler son and I were relaxing in the bath together when I started to get actual contractions. They were so intense that I could no longer talk with him. We started timing them 4 to 5 minutes apart regular. 45 minutes later, We called my brother to come because he was going to take our son and care for him. This was it, the start of a long night. All that raspberry cherry tea and bliss balls were about to come in handy. I was trying to dress, but I had to curl up and grimace with each contraction. Oh, they were so painful. And then I felt the poop urge, and I went to the toilet, but the position was just too uncomfortable. So I decided that outside was better for me. I could just poop in the woods and really get into my birthing zone, surrounded by nature and away from all the toddler chaos. 8:30, an hour later. My husband was still tidying up dinner and giving my brother a rundown on babysitting, and I sent out a text to my family and some women friends to ask them to keep me in their thoughts. Alone outside, I was able to focus on getting through these intense contractions. My husband was still finishing off inside, and I desperately wanted him to be with me. In my previous birth, he was my emotional and physical rock, and he did not leave my side during the entire labor. But this time, it was different. It was just so much more painful. I couldn't walk or yell to get his attention. The pain was that intense. So I kept counting and breathing through the contractions to get some relief and keep my mind positive. But the breaks were too short. I was crawling around on the front yard, pooping and contracting, breathing and counting. This was way more painful than my last labor, and if this was going to last another 8 hours, I was going to have doubts that I could go through with it. I regretted that I didn't have the option for any kind of pain relief, and then self-doubt raised her ugly head. So I reached out to the universe, to all the friends and family that were with me in spirit, and I got an inner sense of peace and strong will. I thought of all the other women in the past that had given birth with no pain relief, and I thought, I've got this. I can do it. Thank goodness my husband finally came out. I told him that I had the worst bowel cramps. He asked me why I was grunting. I don't know. I'm grunting? So I grunted back, yeah. He suggested checking the fetal heart rate in my cervix and that I move inside. But I said, no way am I going to have any pair of hands in that area right now. And no way could I even move to get inside anyway. I felt like my colon was just sticking out and my entire insides were being pooped out of me. Something wasn't right. Was it hemorrhoids, or should I not have eaten that white bread pizza? I didn't know what was going on. The extreme constipation I felt was not good for labor. Next contraction, he looked. And he looked below and was blown away. He said, "It's a head." What? Wait, he said, "I need to get some stuff from the inside. You only have a few more pushes." And then I just pushed twice and then sudden relief. He just made it back in time to catch our baby. And I lay there in the grass, and our daughter was passed up to us. The relief was immense. I could not believe that I had just had a baby. It wasn't supposed to come this quick. I was elated. So I lay there with her on my chest, towels around me on the lawn, under the cedar tree, overlooking the Robson Valley with the Fraser River below. I felt extreme gratitude. Gratitude to my body, to Mother Earth, and all the life that I was a part of. And there was a gorgeous sunset, the first we'd had for some time. It was such a rainy summer. It was 8:56 p.m., less than an hour and a half from start to finish. I felt so blessed. So after some time, my husband suggested that I go inside because the mosquitoes were starting to get bad. He helped me climb the stairs to our bedroom, and we relaxed, full of joy at the arrival of our wee girl. It was the first night that we'd had without our little toddler son in bed with us, and it was so beautiful to be there together, just the two of us with our little baby girl. Born on earth, under a cedar tree, under the setting sun, overlooking Bell Mountain in the Robson Valley. What gratitude for such a beautiful arrival in the world, my precious wee girl.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all the courageous women of this community who have gifted us with their experiences with profound honesty. And thank you to you, the audience, for braving this intimate subject matter and being here tonight. I hope this event will contribute to meaningful conversations and a deeper appreciation for both the beauty and the onerous demand that birth elicits. Thank you to the Robson Valley Community Services for endorsing the event and managing the admissions. RVCS is currently broadening their services on a platform that's inclusive to the whole community. Admission money from this event will be going to one of RVCS's newest programs, currently still in development, for maternal care. The program is being built from the ground up, so it's an exciting time to be exchanging ideas and bringing local context to relevant issues to this table. Thank you to Wishbone Theatre and Sharon Stearns, whose expertise provided a stage, and to the performers for giving the stories a voice. Thank you also to Kazuko Hiroe, my sister, for being my personal encyclopedia of birthing information when I was trying to figure stuff out, and Bob Thompson, the man behind our delightfully provocative poster.
And one more acknowledgement before you quit is I'd also like to acknowledge Miwa Hiroe for this. This is probably the 8th year that I've been working with her with Wishbone, and this is her directorial debut. So I'd like to...
And thank you also to Sarah, who's out in the audience, and who's a jackpot sister-in-law and ran the concession for me and looked after a lot of other little details.
And our light and sound guys.
Thank you, Dan Lawless.
Yay. And for Michael Peters for filming the whole event. Thank you, VCTV.
Okay.